Back again. Another episode of A Muslim and an Atheist Breaks Bread. What you saying, Pops?
I'm good, man.
Right, so we've done a few videos on China. Still don't know anything about China other than I know a few more of the dynasties. I know that the Mongolians took over. I know there's a thing called Mandate Heaven, which essentially is just exactly the same thing as when English people say, or English royal families say, that they were chosen by God to be royal. But Confucianism, is that right? Confucianism.
That'll be good enough.
Confucianism.
Confucianism, that's it. That'll work for me. Beer confusion. Fuchsius.
No, yes, a Fuchsius. Anyway, so we're going to look into Confucianism, if that's right. And we're going to look at the principles behind it. So, yeah, anything you want to add, Dad? You know a little bit about this, don't you? Really?
Philosophy, ideals.
It's philosophy, but is it the same kind of ideals as the Buddhism? Are they similar?
Yeah.
Yeah, they're similar then, yeah. All right, let's take a look.
Brought to you by Wondrium. Click the link in the description below to access a huge library of educational content taught by leading academic experts. In September 2004, more than 3,000 people participated in a grand ceremony celebrating the 2,555th birthday of Confucius. The event was held at the main temple of Confucius in Chufu.
Sorry, how many people?
3,000. Not really a lot, but they make it sound like a lot.
Yeah, 3,000. I was going to say.
The sage's birthplace.
How many people go
It was
Super
the
Bowl?
first official memorial service for Confucius since the establishment of the People's Republic of China in 1949. The ceremony was attended by descendants of his family, as well as party officials and local politicians, and it featured traditional music and dances, as well as prayers and offerings at the altar. This event represents the culmination of a 2-decade-long Confucian renaissance in mainland China. Throughout most of the 20th century, Confucianism's status was at an all-time low. Labeled as a relic of the past and a conservative tool of suppression, Confucianism was rebuked and persecuted by the Republican regime that ruled China between 1911 and 1949, as well as the Communist Party, which took over in 1949.
Across the two
As
wars.
we've learned in the previous videos in our Confucianism series here on Religion for Breakfast, throughout Chinese history, Confucianism was associated with the imperial state and its traditional institutions of power. The notion of the emperor as the son of heaven, the performance of imperial rituals designed to maintain a harmonious relationship between heaven and earth, and the civil service exam that guaranteed that all state officials were masters of the Confucian classics, which were seen as the key for good and just government. As long as the Chinese Empire enjoyed military, political, and cultural dominance in East Asia, Confucianism was held in high regard. Neighboring cultures such as Korea, Japan, and Vietnam adopted Confucian values such as filial piety, and they established Confucian academies and civil service examinations themselves. But toward the middle of the 19th century, the star of Confucius was starting to wane. So let's start with Confucianism's fall from grace. In the 19th century, power relations in East Asia began to shift. Britain, France, Russia, and the United States started growing in influence, which had a severe impact on domestic politics across the region. A series of military defeats forced the rulers of China at the time, the Qing dynasty, to sign humiliating peace treaties that included crippling war reparations, unequal trade agreements, and the ceding of
That go hand in hand with like the Industrial Revolution, as in
Colonialism.
guns.
Well, Industrial Revolution was a move forward in technology for us, the people.
Yeah, but I'm saying it's like...
That is just occupation.
Yeah, but this is what I'm saying. So when it's saying that, we started to grow in influence, but would that have coincided with the times where we were able to have weapons, as in guns?
Who do you mean we?
The West, let's say the West.
Well, the West has always had state-of-the-art weapons, in it.
Yeah, but back in the 18th century.
Yeah, they had guns and stuff, the crossbows, and they had state-of-the-art technology for the time. So they've always been a warring nation, so they've led on advancement.
But would they have had guns in the 18th century? The 18th century is more Like
crossbows,
1700s.
Crossbows and stuff.
Yeah,
The
but I'm saying there was
gun,
a
the
point
gun
where
was
guns came in.
evolution of crossbow after they plundered gunpowder from China. So once they discovered the use of gunpowder and the manufacture of it safely, then they started using it. Its primary use is a weapon of war. The fact that it can do fireworks like the Chinese were doing.
Oh my goodness.
You know, yeah, but once they found gunpowder, they just added it to the weapons that they already had in it. You know, put a gunpowder on the front of the spear and it'll explode when it lands, stab you and blow you up. What are you looking
That's
for?
crazy. Yeah, I was just looking at when like guns started to be used in war.
Well, with the gunpowder, with the advent of gunpowder, who they got from the Chinese. The Chinese were the first people using
gunpowder.
fireworks.
Yeah.
For firework purposes, not for purposes of war. But the British learned quick, and the Americans.
Yeah.
Key port cities such as Hong Kong. Faced with external attacks and internal political instability, the Qing emperors realized that something needed to be done, which ended up being Confucianism's last stand. In 1898, a Confucian official by the name of Kang Yao-wei spearheaded a series of reforms aimed at modernizing the imperial state. Kang's most drastic proposal involved adopting a European-style constitutional monarchy.
Do you know what's also weird about this is when I always thought of Confucianism, I always thought it was more. Do you know how like a lot of spiritual religions are kind of born not from elitism? Whereas from what I'm hearing from this is all about elitism. It's all about keeping that status quo.
At the moment, yeah.
Yeah, like the divine right of the ruling class. So I haven't heard anything really about the people.
Like the Bible, you mean? Don't answer that. Yeah, but yeah. That was the purpose of the Bible, innit? To help it implant that divine right into the people's mind.
Yeah, but a bit differently. So their divine mind's being planted from the top, bottom, where isn't the Bible more from the bottom up?
King James wrote the Bible, innit? It comes from the top and is sold out to the masses before it was all in Italian.
That's true. Yeah, but even the Bible, I could say the Torah. I should say like the belief in God then, really.
No,
Rather than
because
the
it's not the
Bible.
belief itself. It's using a book to create a system.
Yeah.
You understand? So Confucianism now is organized philosophy into one system and called Confucianism. Christianity is organized philosophy into another system called Christianity.
Yeah.
And so this was all led by a book where everybody can go to that book and make reference, see Confucius says. So you don't have to add or subtract anything, just take what Confucius says as gospel. So it became more popular with the new thinking that emerged, and they started to use it again. Before that, it came and it was just didn't take hold.
However, as a seasoned scholar official, Kang knew that these sweeping political reforms would not succeed without sweeping educational reforms. After all, Kang was a staunch Confucian. He had passed the civil service exams at a young age, and he mastered the classics. So, to fix China's education system and low rates of literacy, he proposed a radical solution. He recommended that all Taoist, Buddhist, and local folk temples across the empire should be converted into primary and secondary schools. Kang's proposal reflected the common belief at the time that China's traditional religions not only were a drain on the economy, but also promoted superstitious, anti-modern mentalities that needed to be stamped out. But Kang also understood the power of religion, its ability to unify people around a common ideology. He was impressed by what he perceived was the central role of Christianity in the rise of modern nations such as Britain, France, and the United States. So Kang recommended declaring Confucianism as China's national religion, and he banned all other religious activities. Kang called his new modern version the religion of Confucius, using a different Chinese word than the traditional name of Confucianism, which translates to something like the religion of the literati. It had very little to do with traditional Confucian activities, such as ancestor veneration, sacrifices to heaven, or praying for academic success at a temple of Confucius. Instead, the national religion of Confucius was modeled on Protestant Christianity, which was gaining popularity in South China throughout the 19th century. Kang's religion featured weekly services in Confucian churches, led by a Confucian pastor, and a heavy focus on learning history, ethics, and traditional culture as the key for fostering...
So this period they're talking about just 30 years before my mom's born. Not really that long ago.
Not at all.
Right, so again, the people was predominantly illiterate at that time. And you know what? They were illiterate in England as well.
That is crazy. I wonder how it takes shape in Protestant Christianity, really. And like you say, if you are illiterate, that's how, if your whole nation's illiterate and you say, oh, we're opening up Confucianism again, people are going to be excited and they're going, really, they're just learning Bible teachings.
All empire builders from Rome realized even Egypt, attaching religion and worship of God. Spiritual people have a spiritual need. Them said it's God gene. So anybody who wants to keep anything in the groups, even gangs, like me say, them have them like a prayer meeting of one kind or another, whether it's Baphomet or somebody else. But this spiritual, ritualistic approach to things is a part of the way people do things, I think. So, you know, Confucius does it teach you anything beneficial? This is the real test of anything. In Islam, for me, I find things which are beneficial. In Christianity, some things I used to do, I didn't see any benefits. There weren't any new learnings. There wasn't, you know, explanation for why things happened, or I couldn't understand them at the time. So getting bigger to get more knowledge to help me understand the smaller, I think is my way. Confucianism, like me say, if you're a group of people who have basically been in the farm, and then you have access to books and language and works and what you deemed as, it's not even that they had it, their kids had access to it.
Yeah.
So all of a sudden now, my family can be elevated through my kids studying this new thing and raising itself, which is how these things take root in any society. It's not the older people, it's the younger people. The older people, them want to go heaven, any society. Them just want to go to heaven without being
learning
depressed.
history, ethics, and traditional culture as the key for fostering a strong Chinese national identity. Interesting as it was, Kang's proposal never took off. After only 100 days, the 1898 reforms were reversed, and he was exiled to Japan. In retrospect, the reasons for its failure are kind of obvious. It's very difficult to force a new religion upon the people. Traditions such as Buddhism and Taoism grew organically in China for centuries, and they were embedded in culture. Moreover, while Kang's religion was named after Confucius, it did not resemble common Chinese religious practice, and no amount of pressure from the authorities was enough for people to adopt it. While the next few years did see more Buddhist and Taoist temple closures, a few attempts to introduce rituals for the veneration of Confucius in state schools, and even an effort to establish a state-sponsored National Confucian Association, by the dawn of the 20th century, more and more people came to think that the imperial state and its Confucian institutions were no longer viable in the modern age. In 1912, the last ruler of the Qing dynasty, the child emperor Puyi, abdicated his throne and was replaced with Dr. Sun Yat-sen, the first president of the Republic of China. The new regime abolished the rituals of the old imperial religion and revoked Confucianism's special status. While the regime did not go so far as to outlaw the religion, it argued that a new modern nation must be divorced from its past. Confucian conservative ideology must be replaced by a secular mentality led by rationality and an adherence to science and progress. Many of the leaders of the young Chinese nation were educated abroad and did not receive a traditional Chinese education. For them, Confucianism was an outdated and repressive tool used by the corrupt imperial regime to control the people. In his 1935 essay, Confucianism in Modern China, Lu Xun, one of China's most celebrated modern intellectuals, famously declared Confucianism to be a useless relic of the past. He wrote, "If the disciples of the sage come forth and start prating, telling us that the sage was this and that, and therefore you must be likewise, people today will not be able to keep from laughing out loud. And then came Communist China. By the middle of the 20th century, it seemed like Confucianism had run its course. The establishment of the People's Republic by Mao Zedong did not change its fortunes for the better. Far from it. Mao's main source of power was China's rural population. The new regime was aware of religion's enduring power in the countryside, and they realized that religion cannot be immediately abolished. Instead, it announced the formation of China's 5 official religious organizations to be put under the jurisdiction of the Religious Affairs Bureau. These included Buddhism, Taoism, Protestantism, Catholicism, and Islam. As you can see, Confucianism was not included. Throughout the tumultuous 1960s and 1970s, Confucius was often scapegoated, depicted as the symbol of China's feudal past. During the Cultural Revolution, intellectuals were branded as public enemy number 1, which was bad news for Confucianism. Given Confucianism's traditional association with the educated elites, it was an easy target for Mao and his Red Guards, the student army that was encouraged to criticize and attack their parents and teachers, the quintessential symbols of the old Confucian value system. In 1973, Mao launched a targeted anti-Confucius campaign. Confucius was labeled the enemy of the people, a counter-revolutionary defender of slavery, and an oppressor of women. In
Really hard.
1974. Is that when that happened? That's modern.
Yeah, this is a book on it though, isn't it?
Okay.
So they're writing books about it. But they're talking about Mao in it. So essentially Mao was mowing down university students, people who wanted to be intellectual. But I think that was around that time. Because there's that picture, isn't there, that famous picture of the woman who's standing in front of
The
a tank.
No. That's related to Hong Kong.
Sure.
Yeah, the tank thing ain't Confucius. That's modern history. That's in my adult life. Mao and them things is still 1930s and stuff like that, innit?
I'll have to look. I'm sure that's the same thing though, the woman with the tank. But yeah, anyway.
She's about 1985, that tank, Tiananmen Square.
Tiananmen Square, that's what
That was the youth, the students, again, coming up back their thing and being defiant every now and then, every 200 years in China.
Yeah, so I'm just saying that it's hard for me because I don't know the principles of Confucianism.
We'll find out, man.
That's what I'm saying. So it's dancing around like what's happened with it, saying it's like, it was made for the elites. It was abolished here. They didn't want to get rid of the government
you
stuff.
missed a bit. It says most of the elites at that time were educated abroad and had no concept of Confucianism.
Yeah, but this is the new Republic of China.
Right. So the elites came back with their Christian mindsets from abroad and implemented this thing.
Yeah, I get that. But what I'm saying
Confucianism.
to you is when Confucianism was around, no, I'm not talking about once they're trying to abolish it and get rid of it. These new elites. I'm talking about the elites the ruling class in China followed this religion and Confucianism. This is what I'm saying.
But only from 1890, not from 17 something. Confucianism, like amongst the elites, took hold. This is what I said, just before Mummy era, before Mummy. So it's recently modern.
No, I think you got that mistake.
Have I?
Yeah. It's not, it's old. So that's what I'm saying. So the ruling class used it to run the country and that's what's happened. But what they're saying is now that when you have the dynasties, all the emperors
they justified their actions.
That was them and it.
So the new group said, nah, we ain't having that no more.
They're politicians, so they're divorced from the religious side of practice. Essentially is what they're saying.
Yeah, because they're educated abroad.
Yeah.
And they're not Confucianists.
So now it's just different elitists, essentially. But what I'm saying is, I still don't know the principles of
Confucianism. But the principles of Confucianism now emerge with Christianity, whereas it was more Chinese philosophy before, but in its new state, it's more a backdoor for Christianity into China.
That was one dynasty, innit? one emperor came to England, was trading and seen Christianity, Protestant Christianity, and thought, I like that. So he tried to start to kind of merge the two. But really, he wasn't using Confucianism anyway, which is why people didn't adapt to it, yeah? So I get that aspect of it. But with the new elites, what they're trying to say is that it's just a relic. They keep using the same word as well, that it's oppressive. So I want to know what's oppressive about it, is what I'm trying to say. Like,
how
you know how you know the
how is it
principles?
practiced?
I know the, yeah, exactly. I want to know the practice of it, because I know the practice of Christianity. I know the practice of Islam. You know, I know the practice of Judaism, but and even Hinduism. But I don't know this. So they're talking about it, but I've got no reference to say like, okay, so I can see why the folly was restrictive. You see what I'm saying?
I could try to explain what I want.
If this is what I'm saying.
1974, the campaign merged with another campaign, this one targeting Lin Biao, a former high-ranking army officer who had allegedly attempted to assassinate Mao in a failed coup a few years back. Propaganda posters reading, "Criticize Lin, criticize Confucius," became a common sight across China until Mao's death in 1976. So how did we get from this to a Confucian renaissance? Confucianism's fortunes turned when Mao died. After nearly 80 years of condemnation, the time had finally arrived for the sage to make his comeback. Deng Xiaoping replaced Mao at the head of the party, who launched a series of reforms that aimed to reverse the damage of the Cultural Revolution. Maoism, which served as the ideological and spiritual core of the People's Republic in the 60s and the 70s, was replaced with the more moderate socialism with Chinese characteristics. Gradually, China's old religious traditions and values emerged from hiding. Temples that were demolished during the Cultural Revolution were rebuilt, and ancient texts that were strictly banned by Mao began to appear in bookstores yet again. The late 1980s saw the emergence of what has been called a culture fever, a nostalgic yearning for traditional ideas, values, and practices to fill the spiritual void left by Mao and his personality cult. The Confucian Renaissance that's been taking place ever since can be divided into two main strands. First, a top-down, state-sponsored attempt to reintroduce Confucian values and ideas that fit the party line. And secondly, Confucian campaigns with a more tangible religious dimension. The secular regime often emphasizes Confucius as a philosopher and educator, a loyal advisor and supporter of the state. Grassroots projects, on the other hand, aim to revive Confucianism as a living religious tradition that can still contribute to Chinese society. Let's begin with the official state-sponsored attempts. Between the early 1960s and 1990s, several Asian countries underwent rapid industrialization and an unprecedented economic boom. One of the reasons given to explain this process was the prominence of Confucian ideology in South Korea, Taiwan, Singapore, and Hong Kong, nicknamed the Four Asian Tigers or Mini Dragons. Certain Confucian values were depicted in the media as Asia's alternative to Western individualism. These values included integrity, loyalty, hierarchy, and an ability to harmoniously cooperate with others and put the interests of society and the nation above individual needs. Seeing these success stories prompted the party to adopt a similar strategy. They encouraged a spirit of...
By that, the one man without a mask.
Just stood there and
you couldn't have said it
the
better,
sheep.
Really. I wonder why, like, individualism is so important in the West.
In the West is probably not the case. It's important to people because isn't that come with entrepreneurialism and creativity and art and those stuff, whereas whilst people put a lot of emphasis on Chinese literature, it tends to be like a martial art, a discipline. You don't just free flow, right?
Yeah, it's not enjoyable.
So I'm going to imagine you don't free flow paint and you don't free flow anything.
It's always like life just looks hard. And
it's always serious. You can't
serious.
just do it for doing it.
Yeah. Right.
Confucian entrepreneurship to help China regain its former glory by making money for the nation. The government paired this economic strategy with projects that tried to re-educate people about Confucianism, stressing the values of filial piety and a harmonious hierarchical society. Local governments were encouraged to hold Confucian classrooms, small village gatherings designed to make people into good Confucian citizens. The state also used Confucianism to try to boost health and well-being for China's elderly population, launching a series of campaigns designed to promote filial piety. In 2012, the government issued an updated version of old Confucian tales called 24 Paragons of Filial Piety, which explained the importance of this virtue to the masses. And in 2013, the government also passed the Protection of the Rights and Interests of Elderly People, a law allowing the state to compel adult children to visit their aging parents. The state also used mass media and popular...
What do you think of that, Dad? A law. A law that makes me come and sit with you for an hour a day. I wonder what happens if you don't do it, though.
You know, different. When I first started going Gambia, and the president who was in at the time, Yahya Jammeh, people used to have to come out at the end of the month and litter pick on the road.
What, just everyone?
Everybody.
Yeah.
Without
That's good, though.
What they did to ensure and force people to do it, I have absolutely no idea. But people went out and did it.
People did it.
All the time. Now there's a new president. Gambia, not very tidy. Because he doesn't believe in that. It's beneath him. And you haven't put anything in place. You've just removed the thing that was keeping everything decent.
Do you know these things like that, though, that can be done on... it's almost, in a sense, it's like, you know, how the government had everyone clapping for the NHS on a Thursday. Is that kind of...
Was that the government doing that?
Yeah, it was the government, innit? I don't know who started it, but whoever started it, and everyone just started doing it, because people who were doing it must have got this feel-good fact, because they weren't getting nothing from doing it. So for you to get up every...
They felt the nurses were heroes, the government, before... Right,
yeah, so this is what I'm saying.
Boris
so there's got to be
created,
more than
save the NHS, save this from Europe, save the NHS.
Yeah, Boris was a fool.
You get me? So Boris is responsible for a lot, man. He's the one who made them heroes and then shafted them straight away, innit?
What I'm saying is there's got to be something more than the threats behind it, innit? For it to last. Like you said, because realistically, were the police in Gambia going around enforcing this law? But no, but people were still doing it, innit? So there must have been something good behind that intention.
Yeah, something was enforcing. I don't know why they did it, but again, maybe if the president or anyone came down the road and it hadn't been done, there was maybe...
Ultimately, if society
have a
thinks
different
that it's
structure,
going to be best, if society think on a whole that it's going to be best to do something, most people will do it. Most people will.
I would say if I put you in charge around here and I'm saying make sure it's cleaned on set days, bro, I'm coming to you. You understand? So the Marabou or the headman, he's responsible for making sure everybody's playing the game. When they're not, come and tell us and we'll sort it out, I would imagine, like anywhere else. But Confucianism and Chinese values and, you know, like I used to work in Chinese day center, man. They're different, blood. It's different people, different thing. You understand? When everybody assimilates at that meeting point, everybody's nice, but as soon as they walk away, bro, that's some next thing. You know.
Well, that's what's good, isn't it? That's the good thing. You don't want everyone to assimilate and be the same. You want people to have different cultures, isn't it?
Don't know.
Really, you do, innit? Otherwise it'd be boring if everyone had the same culture, same thing.
Boring.
Yeah. It's good to meet people.
Right.
You know, you meet people with different culture and doing different things.
What you need to do is have a society that works and functions. Now, meeting people...
Whoa. You don't need to meet people. That's a very... I disagree, actually. I think
So
life...
can I finish before you take over?
Yeah, go on.
Okay, that's always one way, innit, right? As I was saying, you gotta make sure your house is in order, your community's in order, your country's in order, and then the world's in order. You can't just make sure the world's in order while your house is chaotic. So on a local level, with the Gambian example, that was the president making local people accountable for local actions.
Yes.
The outcome was cleaner, better, needed doing. We don't have enough money to set up trucks to go around and do all this kind of stuff. Like, I don't want to do it. It's fuel in the country and it's a pride thing. So Like I said, I got no issues with people doing things and contributing to their community, because a lot of people want the time to go and chase wealth, and at the expense of contributing in Aston, the bins and the road condition terrible, man.
I disagree with that as well. I don't think most people do want the time to chase wealth, because I think most people don't chase wealth.
Well, which one that?
I think most people are quite comfortable sitting, just being content and doing what they're doing. And going back to the point when you said that you don't need people, I think that's very individualistic, because you do need people. I think whether you want to be around people, and even if you don't need people, the want is an important one. You couldn't like get up in this world and not want to meet new people.
Right, you can get up in this world and not want them. You have the privilege of doing it, because 90% of your other things that you should be dealing with are being dealt with. So your home life, your family responsibilities, it's under manners, so that affords you the time to dream. But in a different set of circumstances, it could be that you would have to go and be on the clock like the next man, because you have to deal with the responsibilities there.
Yeah, but either way, like the social aspects of human beings would mean that if I didn't have that, then life would be
boring.
Shit. Like, even if I had everything sorted out and I had no social aspect, this is why you see a lot of people who get up, go to work, go home, like essentially live their life based on Maslow's hierarchy of needs. No, Maslow's hierarchy of needs, like you was just describing, your house, your food, your work, and like your needs.
That's
essentially
the foundation level.
Yeah. So if that's all you're basing your existence on,
some people
you're gonna be miserable.
No,
and this
they're
is
not miserable. They're content. That's where they want to be.
No, they don't want to be there.
Not everybody could be Michael Jackson. You understand? Not everybody can be LeBron James or Stephen Curry, who are exceptional.
But they're extremes.
Exceptional.
Yeah, they're extremes.
So in between there and here, right, you have some people who are all in the money game in terms of recognizing and understanding at an early age that this pathway presents these barriers and these challenges, but it adds up to this. This pathway presents this, and this, right?
Yeah.
Your generation gets the benefit from our generation. Our generation didn't have entrepreneurs before us. You know, we had people who came to England and needed to work to make their family survive.
Yeah.
My generation now are the kids who, again, like you, can think, well, if it all goes wrong, I'm going home to mom.
Yeah.
You understand? So this is what I said. That is privilege, because you 100%. Can take chances and do things that the other generation couldn't. It doesn't make them lesser, different, or anything. It just means they couldn't take those chances. They didn't have a fallback. They're not from this country. Blah 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 blah. Blah. You understand? Benefits and everything's changed.
Yeah, but
your
it's
generation.
but like I said to you, it's relative, isn't it? So what you're saying to me is that you just mentioned LeBron James and people who are exceptional, but that's like so far down the scale.
Yeah,
it
so
doesn't.
We're not talking about them.
So what I'm saying to you is, it doesn't matter whether I've got the privilege of being able to go back and say to my mum, "Mummy, I fucked up. I'm coming home." Do you know what I mean? That's irrelevant, because it's relative. The social aspect of human beings is human beings need people to feel good, and that's just.
Yeah, that's not a question.
Yeah. So this is what I'm saying. So I'm saying to you that you need them social aspects. So when you say to me, no, some people are happy just going to work, feeding their family, getting up, going to work, feeding their family. Only if they're getting that social aspect and all of it from the 4 people that live in their household with them, then they're not going to escape that. If you've got no one to talk to and you've got no relationships, and I mean none, and there are people like that with no family who literally do go to work and go home and probably sit on their own, I can't see them people being happy. I don't care what they say. They might be content. Their bills might be paid. Like I said, that hierarchy of needs has been met, but it does not mean that they're happy.
Well, what would constitute happiness? Somebody's personal definition, right? So
I was going to say, it's different for everyone, isn't it?
Determined by you. Whereas my happiness, as I would say to people, is Everyone says, why don't you go on a holiday?
Because that would not make you happy.
Huh?
Go on.
Well, for me, I said, if I build a trek, it's like I did 2 weeks in Gambia anyway. The exact same feeling I get for going Gambia, I can get by building a track, building a brand new tune, and I achieve the same level of feeling.
Happiness.
Right, so this is what I said. I realized that about myself. I didn't like watching basketball, but if I played, nothing mattered.
Yeah.
I didn't have to be an England player or nothing. I just like playing basketball. And when that time was being spent, it wasn't tradable for anything else. I like that. I didn't have to win. I didn't have to lose. I just had to play. So this is what some people do, like I said. Whereas now, pursuit of wealth, that in itself is a discipline and a thing that you have to put your head down and focus. Unless you're lucky, it just comes to you.
Yeah,
there are those.
there's people are lucky.
Generally, whilst there are hundreds of new business startuppers who can go a year, 2 years, long-term sustainability in any business, at what time does it become long-term? You've got to decide on that. And how do you keep it sustainable, particularly when it's at the mercy of the public purse?
Yeah.
So you've got to have something which is designed, needed by all, and people can afford to buy and access it, easy access and affordable. These are central to any new business model. And relative, the context like podcasting, all this thing, that's relative to today's society and the technology. People are on their phones, everybody can access that stuff. People can voice their concerns, opinions, fears, and everything else now. And it's, like you said, at different time it's acceptable. But if you voice certain opinions, they shut you down as fast as. So you're not really free to voice. The mechanisms are there to do it, but you can't actually do it legally.
No, you can do it legally. You just can't do it.
They'll just shut you down and take your video down off their platform.
So that's what I was literally just about to say. No, you can do what you want to do, but you've gone onto their platform. So the actual expectation of freedom of speech on something that belongs to someone else is like a man walking in your house and doing a shit in your toilet without asking you. It's the same thing. So when people go to me, oh, they've banned me, like they're being PC, yeah, because it's their platform. They can do what they want to do.
Their platform.
They're not killing freedom of speech,
started
though.
on the opposite end of things.
Yeah, but they're not killing freedom of speech.
Because of the popularity of free usage, that's how it became popular, right? You could do what you wanted to do on it without any remorse.
Yeah, of course.
But now it's not saying you can't do what you want to do. What it's saying is we're censoring what we don't want you to talk about. So whether it's right or it's wrong, we don't want you to talk about it. Now, that's the distinction with what's happening with social media now. Not that you can't do it. Do it, we'll take it down because we don't want you to talk about that. Not that there's an argument for or against it. We don't want you to talk about it, period.
Which means
so
an argument
this
against.
is censorship. This is censorship. Whereas if there was some way you could discuss it and there was obviously you don't want people going up there race baiting and doing all that.
Of course, there's always
There's always a line. But in terms of having an opinion, or actually you blew my house up with a bomb, I can't come on TV because you blew my house up with a bomb. I can't tell anybody that. That's not exactly fair and unbiased reporting.
But the two things are different. If we're talking about news, journalism, reporting, completely different discussion to us talking about people having an opinion online, social media. Two different things. News and journalism reporting should be completely unbiased and should be open to all interpretations of it. Yeah, it's not, because again, it's owned by people who are public people. So it's owned by Rupert Murdoch. It's owned by people who have their own narratives and bias. So obviously they're going to run it through their own confirmation bias and they're going to want to push what they believe. That's the thing. But social media, again, is a platform that anybody can write on. But people go, oh, but they're blocking my posts, they're shadow banning me, they're doing this. But yeah, but you're on their platform. You can't moan about the platform that you choose to be on. Like, realistically, you don't need a platform. If you want to make your own, you can make your own.
Of course.
So for you to then moan about how they're doing it doesn't seem like any sense to me. They own it, it's theirs.
The nonsense part is not so much that they do it, it's the fact that it's all retrospective in it. So it's not just one thing, it evolves, the rules evolve.
Yeah, it starts there. They start with something small and then it's like...
First you're doing this, like I said, before it was all porn, and then you got banned and blocked and everything if you put a porn movie up there. So it's evolved into politically
Well,
correct.
it's your freedoms, isn't it? So 1 minute they can stop it. It's something simple, like I said. They can stop you from posting something on social media, but then they can actually stop you from protesting at all. So it's like the testing the water with one thing. How far can we push it? Like 1 minute they're locking you up if you go to a party, and then they're locking you up if you come out your house. They're like, you know what I mean? They're different things. So... yeah, let's get back into this.
To introduce Confucius to new generations. An anime-style TV series simply titled Confucius first aired on China's Central Television Network on September 28, 2009, marking the celebration of the sage's 2,560th birthday. Heavily funded by the government, the series ran for 104 episodes, following the life of Confucius from childhood into old age. While it was based on the classics and other Confucian writings, the show was clearly targeting a young audience and often incorporated pop culture references and talking animals alongside its depiction of Confucian morality. The following year marked the release of the biopic Confucius, starring Hong Kong actor Chow Yun-fat. Playing on the popularity of martial arts movies, the movie employed cinematographer Peter Pao, who won an Academy Award for the 2000 film Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, and it portrayed Confucius as a wise and peace-loving sage trying to bring an end to the violence during the Warring States period. Much like the animated series, the film was partially funded by the government in the hope that it would become a blockbuster. Unfortunately, it was released against James Cameron's hugely popular Avatar. Despite the regime's best efforts, which included ordering some theaters to take down Avatar and replace it with the Confucius movie, it was a commercial and critical flop. This is just one example of the limitations of state-sponsored projects. In order to truly understand the nature of the Confucian Renaissance, we need to look at the grassroots projects. One of the key features of classical Confucianism was its association with the educated elites. The rise in literacy rates in the modern age and the emergence of mass media and the internet have changed this picture completely, enabling much more diverse and sometimes even subversive forms of Confucianism to arise. Even though he used to be a figure of the educated elites, in the 21st century Confucius has become a true man of the people. In the past, most people could only practice Confucianism by engaging in ritual practices such as ancestor worship and visits to the temples of Confucius. Today, everyone with a smartphone can read the classics and connect with like-minded Confucians, engaging in discussions on Confucian websites or on social media sites like Weibo, which is China's version of Twitter. One of the key figures who helped popularize Confucius is the media studies scholar Yu Dun. Unlike other scholars of Confucianism, who are usually trained in philosophy, religious studies, or history, Yu Dun is not an expert in ancient Chinese culture. But in 2006, her lecture series on Confucius was broadcasted on the state-sponsored CCTV television network and became an overnight success. Her version of Confucius is influenced by the success of self-help books in China and has often been described as a Chinese version of the famous Chicken Soup for the Soul franchise, offering practical advice for modern viewers seeking spiritual comfort in an increasingly competitive and isolating society. The book based on these lectures, Confucius from the Heart, sold millions of copies and has been translated into a bunch of different languages, prompting the rise of a cottage industry devoted to Confucian self-help books. These are designed to help people achieve success in business, deal with their family problems, or find inner peace and comfort. More and more parents in China are also sending their children to traditional Confucian academies. Kids are exposed to a strict traditional education that's formulated to aid their emotional, moral, and spiritual growth, while encouraging socialization and group harmony. Efforts to counter the individualism that parents believe is plaguing contemporary Chinese society. Another privately backed project is the lavish gold statues commissioned in 2015 by Wang Dianming, a retired army general and a self-made millionaire. Located in the seaside resort of Beidaihe, the official summer retreat of the Communist Party, the statue features Confucius with his arms open wide in a pose kind of like the famous Christ Redeemer statue towering over Rio de Janeiro. In fact, the religious overtones of this portrayal of Confucius as a a Christ-like savior sparked some controversy in China. As this case shows, grassroots Confucianism sometimes represents a challenge to the regime, which wants to control the sage's narrative. I want to be clear that this is not something new, something unique to the current government. Throughout its history, the imperial state always wanted to have the final say about Confucius, to have the final say about what the correct form of Confucianism should be. As you might recall from the last video in this series, when the cult of Confucius became too popular, the court issued a decision to remove all statues of the sage from the temples of Confucius and replace them with plain wooden tablets. A similar episode played out in 2011 when a statue of Confucius was prominently placed in front of the National Museum of China, only to mysteriously disappear and later resurface in a much less conspicuous location in the museum's sculpture garden. The incident was attributed to internal power struggles within the Communist Party, but the fact that some portions of the population celebrated the statue's removal sends a clear signal that the future of the Confucian Renaissance in mainland China is uncertain. As all of the examples we just discussed suggest, Confucianism is a living, breathing tradition, constantly changing and adapting itself to new circumstances. While we don't know what its ultimate fate in mainland China will be, its rich history certainly suggests it will continue to evolve and provide inspiration for generations to come. I want to thank our sponsor for this video, Wondrium. From the same folks who are behind the Great Courses Plus, Wondrium is the premier educational...
What do you think, Pop?
We're going to learn a lot, man. Confucian sounds confusing. Confucianism.
Yeah, to me, like I said, I think until we really nail down
It's
the
a tool,
principles, I think we need to nail down the principles of what it is so we can have a real conversation around it. And how it affected the people, essentially, because I don't really know that. I just keep hearing people want to get rid of it, people want to bring it back. So I need to know the principles. Other than that, I thought that was a good video. My man was a good narrator.
Well, what I do know about is all Chinese overseas universities have a Confucius department. So they're still using it as a tool, even abroad. Now, the relevance there, I don't know if you send Chinese students to America to study, why is they subsidize the university and have a Confucianist department who spy on the Chinese students.
Okay.
Which there's stories like that about it basically being a state-run thing to spy on overseas people.
Yeah.
They have Chinese prisons in every country. Chinese people walk around plain clothes and will come and grab you up if you're not going on as per how things are supposed to go. So
It's like the morality police on it.
yeah, it is exactly that. And
They're
the
not
way
that
it's
like a
being
run on that.
used and relativity, as me say, as soon as they said it's like Christianity introduced into China, then you know it's like Red Cross introduced into Africa. You know, all the vaccines came and diseases came with the Red Cross. And I would imagine Confucianism is
It's the same.
a way of doing things.
Okay, then, so that was another episode of Muslim and Atheist. Please like, comment, subscribe. Let us know what videos to do on China.
If you know about China.
If you know, let us know of any interesting facts, anything that you want us to look up as well. I always like to get a good book as well. So someone, please comment on a book I should read about the subject. Anything else you want to say, Pop? All right, we out. Peace.